Welcome to Boris FX Live. Sponsored by Dell Precision Workstations, create without limits. And by NVIDIA. And Intel.
Hello everyone and welcome to Boris FX Live. I'm Ben Brownlee and it's an exciting show we have today because we're discussing the growing trend of AI art, what it is, how it can be used and what challenges and opportunities it presents to us as visual artists. And to help me with this, I'm going to be joined by a cadre of human intelligences, including Ryan Connolly from Film Riot and Boris FX's own Roshane and Nick Haraz. So we're going to be coming at this from an artist's point of view with practical guides about how to use these tools in your own work. Also some practical advice about what to look out for, including potential issues regarding things like copyright. And also some great tips about how to properly talk to these engines to get the best results. And I'm actually really glad we're live on this topic because it means we get to hear from you what you think, what your experiences are, and what you have been doing with AI art. And here's how you get involved. If you're watching on YouTube or on borisfxlive.com, you're going to have a lovely little chat box to the right hand side of your viewer. And we want you to ask all your questions, add all your comments, and just basically tell us what you think as you start to go through the session today. There is another reason, of course, to go to borisfxlive.com. It isn't just the chat. That is obviously our competition. So we're going to be giving away some great prizes today as well, as we always do. And to enter this, just go to borisfxlive.com, scroll down to the bottom of the page and add in your details in the little box there. We're going to be giving away, I think it's 3 copies of Optics today. An annual subscription, $99 value. So that's 3 of those going to lucky winners. And we also have a prize going away to, or being given away to the person who stays to the end of the stream. It's going to be the Boris FX Suite. So that's an annual subscription of $12.95 value. So there's a lot of good stuff coming up. So you're going to want to stay to the end of the stream anyway. But those little competition things are going to help you along. All right. I just want to say thank you to our sponsors, of course, NVIDIA, Dell and Intel for helping us to make this live stream work. Of course, who could forget the biggest shout out always goes to Dell's Precision 3660 tower, cost effective, scalable performance in a mini tower design. So thanks very much to all of our sponsors, of course, for helping us out with Boris FX Live. So without any further ado, I'm going to bring in the first 2 of our guests who are going to be joining me today. I'm not going to be doing all of the heavy lifting. I want to say hello and welcome to Roshane and Nick Haraz, both obviously from Boris FX, my colleagues. Hello, gentlemen.
How's it going, Ben?
Hey, Ben.
Hey. So, I mean, both of you have been working with AI art and the tools that have been available for a little while now. So, I know I've certainly already got some of your wisdom bestowed upon me. So, we're looking forward to hearing what you have to say about some of this stuff later.
Super fun stuff. We're looking
already,
at.
yeah.
It is, and there's so much to do as well. So I think actually probably I'm going to say goodbye to you for 2 seconds because I think probably what's a good way of coming to this is actually to just give everyone a bit of an idea and a history and an understanding of what it is we're going to be looking at and the tools we're going to be looking at as well. So I'm just going to cut over to this little thing here. It's just a little amuse-bouche as we talk about, what is text-based AI art, where it's come from, and where it's going, how to use it. So I think probably the most the best place to go is to just sort of travel back a short period of time with me. We're going to the dim and distant past of 2015. And there was basically a huge leap forward when machine learning algorithms were able to label objects in an image and then translate those labels into a natural language description. So this was actually really great for automating and searching through the millions of images that are created daily. But obviously there's another side to this as well. What happens when you ask a machine to take a text label and come up with an image? And this was research that was carried out by a team from the University of Toronto, which led to some interesting results. You know, they were able to use captions to derive novel scenes, novel images that were not seen in the data set that had been used to train the model. So these images were small. I mean, I think they were 32 by 32 pixels, but they were there. And these were new images created entirely by a computer of things that it had never seen before. And I'm going to just flash forward to the present again. And basically, there's been a huge amount of AI research papers, or machine learning research papers, really. And we've got, you know, many commercial and non-commercial text to image projects available for us to use as artists. And this is where it sort of starts getting fun. Because one of the things that makes text AI artwork work, I think, is the breadth of the inputs. We need to feed in a lot of data. A model is only as good as its training data. And training requires a huge amount of data. I was going to say a large amount of data. It's actually a huge amount of data. But luckily, you know, the fundamental interconnectedness of all things, that is internet and big tech, has created a large pool on which we can draw. Now, this often happens with or without the explicit consent of those creating the original data that's being fed into the training. We don't really have to worry about these people, though, because these people don't exist. They were created by AI, by an AI algorithm. So this person does not exist.com. Excellent place. But obviously, this leads to a lot of ethical questions around using machine learning algorithms to help with things like law enforcement, health services, and actually even art creation. But, you know, we'll get to that in a little bit. You know, where I first came into contact with high quality examples of AI art was Dall-E, which is created by a company called OpenAI, which is based off of the GPT-3 machine learning model, which is huge. It's a huge amount of data that's being fed in there. And Dall-E had the ability to synthesize images from natural language prompts, including ambiguous prompts like a storefront that has the word OpenAI written on it. But also we can get specific with geographical locations or even styles, as we see in the bottom. And this idea of styles is a very important one. I mean, there's actually quite a big difference between a prompt of an image and asking for a painting of an object, or in this case, an illustration of an object. Dall-E and Dall-E 2 now, they haven't made it fully out to the public yet. There's closed invite-only access at the moment, but this is changing all the time. Like recently, API access was opened up not so long ago, a couple of weeks ago. But this Dall-E training actually did spur on other researchers who created and unleashed a whole host of other tools that we're able to use now. And this is where we sit. So in the rest of this session, we're going to be looking at some of the popular AI tools. We're going to be looking at how to use them effectively, why to use them, and also we're going to discuss some of the legal and moral questions that sort of spring up. So I think the first thing to know is that each tool comes at a solution in a different way and creates different results. And we can see actually from the same prompt that these three engines have created some vastly different results. So often, you know, picking the right engine for a job is still necessary. And I'm going to say again, this is moving very, very quickly, with new features added, regularly to all of these engines. Which leads us on to why. Why do we want to use AI art, and what can we use it for? And this is really broad, obviously. I mean, some of the more obvious uses for it are things like MoGraph, like backgrounds for MoGraph. So based off of a single prompt, and very simple prompts, we can begin to get some images together. And the idea here is that we iterate easily and quickly until we find something that fits our style, and then sort of build off of that. And, we don't have to, base everything off of the image that the computer spits out at us. One of the things that I use this for, probably more than anything else, is actually sort of thinking about inspiration. So if we take a little look, what I got out of my prompt was the image on the left. And so I took that shape and that style, and then sort of started to craft something that was a little bit more human to it. The idea isn't that we have everything served to us on a plate. We're using it in a sort of more creative way. Another thing it really helps us for is like things like storyboarding. It's easy to capture a mood, and just off of a few basic prompts that we see here. And I've seen whole comic books that have been created in this way. And if you stay tuned, Nick is actually going to be showing you some special tricks a little bit later to show you how you can get nice consistent results between prompts. Another thing, of course, another big one is look dev and previs. So I sort of think of this as finding ideas beyond a Google image search. Google image has obviously become a mainstay of sort of that initial brainstorming, ideas gathering kind of thing. But what I like about this is that it's a way of moving past that, and even abstract ideas can become closer to sort of reality, and just using those ideas maybe a bit more directly or literally, or basically just have them as a jumping off point, which really brings me into thinking about this as creative inspiration, motivation, mood boards, or even ad agency pitch decks. And this last one is kind of interesting, because like a lot of the time, many of those pitch decks start to seem a bit circular in their use of references already. There seems to be sort of touchstones for particular styles that people are drawn to again and again. And this is something that sort of triggers the whole sort of concept of AI art triggers people a little bit by saying, is this going to take away, is this going to take away everyone's jobs? And in many ways, there's kind of like, when using it for this sort of way, what's worse is right clicking on someone's website and directly lifting their image and putting it in a deck, any better than having a computer make an abstraction of that idea on which you can start to build. And I think it's that sort of abstraction, that sort of moving a step away, that makes this a little bit interesting. It's exciting to see what abstract prompts can create. For example, here, I mean, this is what I got out when I took the title of this segment, what is text-based AI art, and asked Midjourney to turn it into something concrete. And we got this. And Nick actually, again, a little bit later in this stream, is going to be taking this idea even further. One of the other sort of ideas that probably isn't as obvious is starting to use this for 360 environment maps, or in this case, 180 environment maps. for things like CGI lighting or, even sky replacements. Let's come here. Oh yeah, this one. This is actually kind of interesting for me because I asked for a 360 map of Aarhus, Denmark, which is where I live, and what I got out was something it's not reality. This is not a real place, but it's taken the flavor of the town, even down to the sort of the way the paving is and the type of houses, and it's given me back this. So it's kind of interesting for things like location scouting, where you're maybe not looking for a particular place, but you are looking for a flavor of something. But really, the idea or the question of why do we want to use AI art is huge. There's so many things you can do with it. Photo cutouts, again, something Nick's going to be looking at. Unique stock material. I mean, this is a big one for me, because I could happily spend hours, maybe not happily spend hours, but definitely spend hours trying to find like the perfect piece of stock that fit what job I was going for or the project I was looking for. And being able to come in here and maybe find something a little bit closer to where I want a little bit faster, that could be something very useful, and it's unique as well. But basically, it all depends. What do you want it to be? This is a very, very open question of how you use it and how it fits into your workflows. And obviously, there are some broader questions around that as well. So, I mean, finally, for this bit here, we've got, how to use it. And there's obviously two elements here. It's like how to use it in your workflow and how to practically generate those images as well. And we're going to look at both of these things. So the art of prompt engineering or promptcraft, which is how you talk to the computer or the different engines to try and get out something that you want. I mean, these things are going to follow in the next segment as well. And so I am going to wave goodbye to my astronaut platypus on the right, and come back to you here. And if I find the right one, there we go. And that's really what this session is going to start to be about. It's going to sort of start to explore some of these bigger questions, but also get into the practicalities of things as well. So I want to just come in now, and I think let's have a look at what we've got. I think I'm going to say thank you to everyone who has been hanging on and give away something. If we've got something to give away, I'm going to talk to Mission Control. Mission Control, do we have our first winner? That's no. Okay, good. Excellent.
Yes, give me just talk.
We do. Okay, good. I will.
25 seconds.
Okay. Well, let's come back to my little platypus. What I'm going to do is I'll have a little look at the chat here and see if there's anything that has been going on. So gentlemen, let's bring you in as well. I mean, where do you see this type of artwork fitting in your workflows?
I guess I'll go first.
Yeah,
sorry,
go for
Nick.
it, Ross.
Yes.
Yeah, we have a little
No
delay, so just bear with us. But yeah, so first of all, Ben, I thought that was a really great introduction. It's really cool to see a little bit about the history. And I think as we get into this, we're going to really break it down for almost like a brand newbie, like how to get started with this. Personally, for me, and probably for a lot of people who are viewing right now, mostly Boris FX is known for our video products where, whether you're editing or creating visual effects or you're a designer, I think that there's a lot of ways that you can start incorporating these tools into your work. And as Ben mentioned, even just for inspiration, I think it's really huge. for me personally, I've been having a lot of fun with playing around with like trying to break the looks. I see a lot of sort of like fantasy, sci-fi, kind of over the top imagery, and I've been kind of personally just trying to play with like, can I create something that actually looks real or looks like different or somehow expresses my own particular vision? And I think that's been like super fun and super challenging.
How about you, Nick?
First of all, I love what you just said there, Ross, about trying to break away from some classic looks. To me, I think what's most interesting about AI art and primarily my experience with Midjourney is really learning how to like talk a new language in some ways. You're now trying to communicate with a computer and to describe it what you'd like to see. And through its own experimentation, not to mention language, give it limitations to what you'd like to see it create. But for me, in some cases, it was being able to have this new way of trying to describe what I'd like to see, learn from limitations, and in some, I wouldn't even call it mistakes, what could be possible. And then I think the other part about AI art that's really exciting is really it's such an incredible community. I mean, when you take a look at Midjourney, you are learning when you first go into the server off hundreds of thousands of people who are prompting it with different criteria. And that entire learning experience, I think, is a gateway to the future of artistic creation in some ways. And then being able to use it in some of the ways that Ben had mentioned earlier when he did that awesome intro.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to definitely a lot to unpack, which we're going to try to do within the next the next couple of hours. I think, and what I'd like to do actually before we do that is maybe Ross, you could take us through just the sort of straightforward process of actually starting to create some prompts and how we can start to work with that.
Yeah, totally. Let's go ahead and do that. So I'm just going to share my screen with you guys.
Cool.
1 second here. Okay, and let me know if you can see my screen. Ben, can you see my screen?
Yeah, it's looking good.
Okay,
Yeah, it's
excellent.
looking good, Ross.
Okay, great. So here I'm going to give you just like sort of like really show you guys how to get started with AI art. And the first site that I ever used, like Ben mentioned, was Midjourney, and Dall-E has been around for a while. But recently, Stability AI has come out with something called DreamStudio.ai. So I'm on this website called DreamStudio.ai, and I'm going to walk you through the interface. And also just to let you know, if you go to the Stability.ai FAQ, it will tell you about the company, it will tell you about the rights, it will tell you about the payment plans, how many credits. Basically, you can start, you get 200 credits for free just to play around with it. And then you're basically on a $10 at a time is basically the plan that you work on. And $10 will get you, I think, about 1,000 images, but it really depends on the settings. So I'm in DreamStudio Lite, and down here these are the prompts, and this is the default prompt that DreamStudio gives you. And you can see it says, "A Dream of a Distant Galaxy" by Casper David Frederick, matte painting trending on ArtStation HQ. And if I hit Dream, now basically the AI is going ahead and it's searching through all the data that it has, and it's basically has generated this image based on this text prompt. Up here on the right, you have the width of in the height of the image. You have CFG scale. This is actually a pretty important prompt in Stable Diffusion. Essentially, it's basically, if I turn this up, it's how closely to the prompt is it going to try to match. Okay, so for example, if I crank this up a little bit and hit Dream again, it's going to try a little bit closer to match the prompt itself. And you'll start iterating on many different different versions. If you crank this all the way up, some people call this deep frying. It might actually just kind of like try to match it so closely that you can start seeing artifacts, but that's actually not that bad. So that's the CFG scale parameter. And the steps is basically the steps of diffusion in how deep it's going into the basically algorithms. And you'll find that if the default is 50 here, but if you crank this up, I'm not even going to do it, but you're going to see my credits actually go up in the upper right. So that means I'm spending more money on this exploration of this image. So what I really actually like about DreamStudio, just for a brand newbie, is that by playing with these settings, I can turn the steps way down. I can turn the scale down a little bit. I can really control exactly how much I'm paying as I'm exploring and generating images. And there's a couple more settings down here that we'll talk about, the seed and the image itself here. Over here on the right, you do have a prompt guide. Very important to, Ben was talking about text prompts, and I know Nick is going to get a lot more into this. But the way you start breaking down the image creation is you're going to give the algorithm some kind of idea. A raw prompt is, there you have some examples here. It's a panda or a warrior with a sword. And then you can basically give different kind of modifiers, like a style. Is this a realistic image? Is this an oil painting? Is this concept art? There's lots and lots of styles, and people have been going crazy over the last couple of months with basically cataloging and indexing and sharing styles. You could even reference, famous artists, famous film directors, lots of different kinds of modifiers here. And then you could even add different, what we call finishing touches here. This might even be like sharp focus or smooth or matte painting, etc. So let's go back, and I'm just going to copy and paste a couple prompts here. Let's start with something very, very simple. So let's just say, castle on a mountain. Show me an image of a castle on a mountain. I'm using the default, settings here. So it's only a 512 by 512 is the resolution. So it's going to render very fast. All right, there's our castle on a mountain. The number there is actually the seed of this prompt, and this is going to start getting important if you want to basically create versions of this image, but keep the basic look of the image. I can up the amount of images that we're generating. Like, let's show me 4 pictures of a castle on a mountain, and hit Dream. Again, process. Again, just be aware that every time that you do this, you're burning your credits. Any of these images that I wanted to then take and modify more, like say, I kind of like this one, I can just click on it, and you'll see that now the seed here is locked. This number is the seed of this image. Think of just sort of like huge randomizers, but now that I've locked the seed, I can modify this, like castle on a mountain sunset. Let's see what that does. Okay, so I kept the same basic, composition, but it added a sunset. Of course, my castle itself got, got hosed. So you have to start playing with the algorithms to really dial in what you want. Let's go back to the default here, and just kind of start playing with a couple other modifiers and text prompts. Okay. So we had castle on a mountain. Let's try pasting this in. We'll just kind of start building castle with a drawbridge, night sky, Switzerland location. So I can give it a very specific place. And again, very cool. Depending on how much you wanted to dial up this CFG scale is basically how particular it's going to try to match the syntax and exactly what you want. Let's give it a little bit more. Let's try this one. Let's say castle with a drawbridge, night sky, Switzerland location, oil painting in the style of Andrew Wyeth. And again, using different famous painting styles, cinematography, you're going to get totally different results here. You can be very, very specific. This is Matsumoto Castle, which is a castle in Japan in the winter, sunset, realistic 35mm photo. And this is kind of the way you start working in these kind of tools. You just basically start playing with the different prompts, and you can really do some very, very interesting things here. I'll just do a couple more, and then I'm going to turn it back to you guys. But here's a much more detailed prompt here, a landscape photo of a fantastic castle in the mountains, designed by a couple different architects, Frank Gehry, Saarinen, etc. 35mm, highly detailed golden rim lighting. Let's see what it gives us. That's pretty cool. Let's see, maybe let's give 4 variations of that. And let's make it a little bit more landscapey. And again, you're burning credits, you're going to start slowing down, but this is the way you start working with these kinds of tools. And pretty quickly, yeah, that's some really nice images. I actually like this one a lot, which kind of does sort of give a little bit of Frank Gehry and a couple of these different different architects into the mix there. So that is a very, very cool way to start working. Just a kind of a couple, goofy ones. Let's just say play off the same theme. It doesn't have to be these realistic imagery. Let's say like a needlepoint artwork of castle on a mountain. Let's see what we get here. Again, always be aware of the size and the number of images that you're working on. But there's our needlepoint. It's actually framed. Very, very cool. So this is the way you can really start working. It's very, very interesting. Let's do one more, and then I want to show you one last tool that's found in the DreamStudio Lite. Again, we're going to magnificent view of a castle standing on a hill. A bunch more like volumetric lighting, different kind of like 3D parameters, and you can really quickly get some really interesting looks there. If you like this image, you just hit this button and you could download it, and it's going to ask you where to download it. Again, understanding that you can save the prompt. You can also use that seed and iterate. These are really, really cool to help you get started using these tools. I want to show you a website that's really kind of interesting. It's called Lexica. And this is because we're using stable diffusion based technology here. This is something that's really geared towards stable diffusion. But it's basically a whole search engine based on people's prompts. So if I look for a castle, it's going to show me lots and lots of different images of a castle that have been diffused using stable diffusion. And any of these I can click and I can get the prompt there. Be aware of the rights, this is open source. So these images, they're essentially, they can be used by anyone. And, I think that's a very, very interesting aspect of the AI art generation is the way that these, who's owns the prompt, who owns the image. And with stable diffusion, it is open source. I'm going to show you one last tool here in the DreamStudio here. What we're going to do is I'm going to show the editor, and I can upload an image into DreamStudio as well, which is kind of cool. So let's go ahead, and I think I'm going to upload this sunset image that I have. Okay, so here I have the sunset image. And the image strength is a parameter. Basically, we can make a variation of this image if we wanted. And if I crank up the strength, it's how much of the original image are we going to keep, or how much, if I dial it down, it's going to create a brand new image. Like, so for example, let's just say, sunset in Hawaii, and see what happens. Again, I think you actually burn a couple more credits when you're using the upload image functionality. But you can see it basically changed my image. Kind of looks a little bit more like Hawaii, but it kept the rocks, it kept the kind of quality, it kept the lighting. That is really cool to me. And that's interesting. And you can really play around with using images as sources. if we look at the editing tools here, you also have some interesting things here. They just added this really recently. In fact, I think it was added in the last couple of days, is you have infill and scaling. So for example, I can hit this little brush here, and let's move that. Didn't want to do that, but that's fine. Let's clear it and re-upload it just for a second. Okay, for some reason it wanted to scale it, but maybe it's because I had my scale setting up here. Again, that's better. Good enough. Okay, so I'm going to use this brush tool, and I'm going to make the brush a little bit smaller. And this is basically called infilling. And let's just make an area right in here. And I'm going to say, let's add a hot air balloon. And again, just hit Dream. It's thinking. And it's going to do its best job to basically insert a new image into our scene. It's going to try to match the lighting and everything like that. Let's see what happens. And it failed. That's interesting. Okay, let's try one more. A lot of the stuff is trial and error because it's, these tools are brand spanking new. Let's do this. Let's put this back in, and let's try something else. Let's go down here. Let's say add a sea monster, and I'll make this a little bit. Play with my settings, make it maybe change that CFG scale. Oh, I said a sea monster. So yeah, syntax, spelling, super important. Let's see what happens. And as you can see, it's a little bit slow as it's thinking here. So let's see what happens. Give it one more second, but maybe we'll bail on this. Come on. All right. Well, I guess we broke the infill, but I think this is a brand new feature that just came out maybe 2 days ago. Kind of odd. That was fun. Yeah, it was working earlier, but so much for live events, right? Again, this is DreamStudio Lite. It's really easy to play with. It's really, you're going to see that I think Nick and Ben are going to show a little bit more of Midjourney, which has a slightly more complex interface because you're running it through Discord. So I think that the DreamStudio, if you just want to get into into image exploration with these tools, it's a really fun and great way to start getting into it. So that's my quick and dirty kind of intro for brand newbies into AI art. So I'm going to stop my
that's great.
Screen share and switch it back to you guys. Okay.
Oh, there we go. You get the applause. Well done. No, that was excellent, Ross. I mean, there's so much there, and I'm glad that you're able to break it live as well. So because like I was saying earlier on, this stuff is moving so fast, and that infill was brought in the last couple of days. So it's exciting how quickly stuff's moving on.
Yeah, no, super fun to play with, and that was just like the tip of the iceberg. Obviously like the castle and very kind of like tame prompts. And I think I think Nick and other people have been exploring. You can go poetic, you can go in any style and object and person imaginable. So it really is really fun to play with.
When watching you demo, Ross, I couldn't help but think, compared to Midjourney, how DreamStudio it almost has given you prompts through sliders and a user interface that's a bit more friendly when you're first starting out. I saw things like image weight and your ability to pick 3 or 4 images. It definitely seems like a more user-friendly place to start when you're doing some of your image-based AR artwork.
It really is. I think
we're going to come back to this in just a moment. Yeah. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in our next guest, who we've got in. He's a Riot He likes film. It's Mr. Ryan Connolly from Film Riot. Hello, Ryan. How you doing? Welcome to Boris FX Live.
Going? Thanks for having me.
It's going very
I'm
well.
Looking like the camera's over here. I'm looking like way over here because my monitor's over here. So apologies on that. Maybe I'll just
that's all right.
Do this the whole time.
I think that would be the best. Actually, I love it. I love it when there's just that awkward flashing across there.
Perfect. Yeah.
So we're gonna chat a little bit about AI art. You've been using AI art for a little while now as well, and I think we've got an example of something that you just put up on the Film Riot YouTube's right here. Roll VT. Awkwardly rolling VT. Right, Brian is literally plugging it in. Here we go. So, explain a little bit about what we're seeing here.
We like to do like little moments. We call them test scenes just for the fun of it, but just little moments to toy around with things. And everything we do is very quick turnaround, so we don't have a ton of time to do things. So they really are just tests of dipping our toe in the water of what could we really do with this. And we wanted to see if we could move Midjourney into our pipeline. As it's been progressing and the images have been getting better and better. With the images getting better and better, and you being able to really steer it in easier ways. I'll shut up and let this play out. A few months ago, we released an episode all about AI. Yeah, so the idea was it was from the new it was from that new show Sandman on Netflix. There was just one shot that we really liked from the trailer, and we wondered, instead of doing what we usually do and kit bashing a background in 3D or finding something that we could just purchase or maybe using a stock image, could we get close to what we were looking for by leveraging Midjourney? And we were able to. It's still, a little rough around the edges. Obviously, the image size is probably, I use Gigapixel, that software, which is more AI software, to up-res the image so we could use it more easily. And there's, you can see a lot of the seams within the image itself because we were trying to go with something more fantasy based, but now with a lot of the upgrades that they had just recently, like you're getting stuff that's just blowing my mind. Even with like portraitures and things like that, it's just crazy where it's going. But just the idea of, can we create assets that we can now legally use, using Midjourney? And the answer was a definite yes for us. So it's something we're playing around with a lot more and thinking about in different terms, because as a company we do a lot of different things. I mean, I'm a filmmaker, so I have a film career over here pitching features and whatnot, but then inside of Film Riot there's so many different things that we can leverage it for, down to we've toyed around with using it for YouTube thumbnails and things like that. So it's a really interesting tool with just a lot of possibilities around it.
Well, that was something I was going to ask you about, because some of the other people I know who are doing YouTube videos are also using this to help to create sort of unique and interesting YouTube thumbs, which has always been a big problem, is trying to get something that sort of hits the spot. I mean, when it comes to actually creating things, how much time are you sort of sinking into sort of finding the prompts and letting that iterative process work, as opposed to coming in with a clear idea and actually just going on and doing it?
For me, it sort of just depends on what exactly that I'm doing. If we're doing something like Film Riot, we have like a very specific idea, or if it's a thumbnail, which we haven't really been able to crack using it for thumbnails yet, but it's definitely going to happen because you can get decently specific and get back what you're looking for, as we showed in the episode. And again, that's just getting better and better. And also, as you get used to what prompts do what, and just switching those words around, and what gets you sort of the style that you want, it's just becoming more and more usable for, you know, the sorts of things that we do. So when it's something like, you know, the effect that we did for Film Riot, or, you know, specifically like thumbnails like we're talking about, we're coming in with a very clear idea of what we want, what style we want, what we want it to look like. So we can even peg it with the, you know, in David Fincher style or whatever, if we want a certain color palette, or Roger Deakins, or you know, a painter of some kind, or whatever it is, you know, movie shot, or shot on a Polaroid, or whatever it is. And you're able to get really specific and come back with very specific things, which is just, it just blows my mind every time. But then on the other end of it, you know, when it comes to the feature side of things for me, there's a lot of things I'm developing. And within that development process, you know, there's a lot of question marks. And, you know, when you have a concept and you start building out, what is that story? What is that world? Who are these characters? What does it look and feel like? It's become such an interesting tool, whereas usually what I would do is, you know, you pull inspiration from other films. You know, Shot Deck is like the greatest site on the planet for that, and you just pull things, and I find myself discovering what the film isn't a lot, and that really guides me towards what it is. And then, you know, every now and again you'll hit something that just clicks just right. This image is just right. The color, the lens, the, you know, the way it feels is exactly what, you know, is in the back of my mind for how the story should be told. And so that's the typical way that I've done it, but it's limited, especially if you have a pretty unique idea. But then with Midjourney, you know, there's this very interesting ability to go down this rabbit hole of creative exploration. And, you know, I've come up with 3 new concepts that I'm building out treatments for just because I was doing that. I was actually using it to try to build out assets for another pitch that I was doing. And something that I prompted the system with brought me back something I completely did not expect. And I started chasing that idea down until I came up with, you know, all these assets, and I was like, oh man, and this whole world came into view. And so a whole, you know, feature idea came from that, you know, 3 times over. But, you know, just being able to build out assets for a pitch, even doing things like creating mock posters to give you different unique ideas instead of just pulling from what's out there, because that's what happens with pitches, right? Like you're pulling from films that people have seen. When you know, make a rip reel, you're just editing shots from other movies that already exist with actors that, you know, these execs have seen before, and so it doesn't feel like its own unique thing. And that's always been an issue with me. So I try to, like, you know, Photoshop as much as possible and make every image look as unique as I possibly can for the stuff that I do. But this completely alters that. You know, you could do, you know, smoky bar at night, woman in a red dress, and you're getting that back it's in you know, 30 seconds, and that's pretty wild. So it's from both avenues of how I operate. It's really like entering in as a tool I'm kind of turning to more and more.
Yeah, I think that's something that we discussed a little bit earlier in the stream, was that sort of creative process where you were sort of trying to figure out some ideas that goes beyond an image search and goes beyond the usual references. You know, Nick, you've been working with this stuff for a while as well now. Yeah. Is there anything that you've got to add to what Ryan was saying?
No, I mean, I've been experimenting it with in 2 ways as well. And I'm most curious right now of exploring further how to weigh images within Midjourney. And when you were just chatting, Ryan, I was curious, in your process of using Shot Deck, are you actually feeding images from Shot Deck to Midjourney, or are you referencing those images and then writing out specifically or just solely text-based prompts for the creation of your assets?
For me, they're two totally separate processes so far. If I'm using Shot Deck, I'm just using Shot Deck. If I'm using Midjourney, I'm sort of just doing the process of discovery there to see, what rabbit. It's almost like so. No, I'm not really feeding it images so much. I'm sort of steering away from those and feeding it, what I think will get back this idea that I have in my head. That maybe I can't even really find on Shot Deck, although it has a bajillion images. And something that I think is interesting too is two other director friends of mine have been using it quite a bit lately as well. And we were talking about how interesting it was because we were all posting on Instagram quite a bit at first when we were really excited about it. And we were all talking about how interesting it was that you could tell who did which one. Even though I'm just feeding this thing text prompts and it's kicking back an image to me that I did not create, it's somehow, because of the words that I choose to use, it's having my sensibilities in there. And a few people told me that hey, it's really interesting that I can tell this one's you, this one's him, this one's her. And I think that's really fascinating. That just, whatever your references are, whatever you're pulling from, it is also finding and pulling back. Because I mean, there is that unique idea of what is this really? What are we actually creating here? Is this actually art? This is not a human making this, but it's, when I create a piece of art of any kind, I am, translating my experiences in life. I'm translating the art that I have consumed, and out comes this new thing. And that's essentially what this is doing. It is removing the human factor. Of course, it's removing the human experience, because that's what I'm bringing to it extra. I'm bringing my human experience to it. So there is that very interesting relationship that it has there that somehow then ends up having, my sensibility to the image to where, that feels like something I would have done.
Well, this sort of ties in really well to one of the questions that we've been getting from chat as well, which, when does AI take over, create, direct, and produce our films? And I just want to sort of add a little bit to what you were saying there, Ryan, is that the reason that I think the reason that people can tell someone's different style as well through these things is there is a selection process as well. You're not just choosing the words, which are obviously going to be the ones that are important to you, and the references that are important to you. You're also being given a choice of whether to take the image that is originally, hallucinated out of this machine, or whether you actually go, that's not what I'm looking for. Let's keep just rolling the dice a little bit and let's iterate on this. Let's take these things, let's tweak it. So, it does sort of start to take on maybe a little bit of your sensibility in that way. I mean, do you think there's any truth to that, or?
No, yeah, absolutely. Because if you any of these director friends of mine, or any major, Steven Spielberg worked with any cinematographer, it's going to look like a Steven Spielberg film, but he didn't do the cinematography. So I think there's a similarity in the idea there. Of course, removing again the human factor and the human experience from it. But yeah, I think that makes a lot. I'd never thought about it from that point, but that's like a really simple and very true explanation for it.
Well, that's where I'm usually there. Simple and true. That's basically it. I mean, I've got another sort of topic that I want to bring up, and maybe this is something that's going to be for the whole group as well. When we talk about taking the sort of human factor out a little bit, there's often the thing that's been leveled against this is that artists are going to go out of work. They're going to be, starving, on the streets because of AI art and this sort of prompting. I mean, where do you see this going in the future? Do you see it sort of, transforming people into the poorhouse, or what?
I mean, you really have heard that just in my career at least 5 times. It's any time there's a new major innovation, everybody panics, and the people that will be out of a job is the people that reject the advancement, reject the technology, don't dive in and see how they can leverage it to reinvent themselves, to then be an asset along with this new tool. The people who say, I'll never do that, AI in editing, blah, I'll never mess with it. AI in, music creation, no way. AI in art, image creation, never. I think those are the people that are going to be left behind, unfortunately. But I mean, is this going to completely take over everything? I have no idea. I have no idea where this goes. I'm even in the episode where we broke it down, I talked about how I'm still trying to wrap my head around this thing, because it is so new, and even just that idea that there's this beautiful piece of artwork not made by a human soul, you know what I'm saying? There's no human experience specifically behind this, although it is taking and sampling from the human experience. It's not one specific voice, one specific. And what does that mean? Is that bad? Is that good? Is that, you know what I mean? I don't have an answer personally to that. It's still all just too new for me to really wrap my head around. I wouldn't, right now, the idea of AI script, for a film, I hate that idea. I want to be told stories by somebody who has experienced life. I don't want to be told stories by someone who has never experienced what love feels like. I want stories from that. That's why I go to the theaters. So there's that avenue of it for me that makes all this kind of strange. But that just could be the brand new of it, and in 2 years I'm like, actually, I don't know. But I do think it's just all this stuff is a jump on board or get left behind sort of thing to me.
Yeah, I'd echo what Ryan just said in some ways. I've been in this industry for a long time. I'm probably the oldest one of all of us here. And there's been many tipping points, whether it was like when nonlinear editing came around, or even recently with the virtual production. There's points where people sort of like wonder, like, oh, is this going to affect our careers? Is this going to affect our job? Some of these new technologies create new jobs that people didn't even imagine. Now you have people on virtual sets, for example, or it changes the nature of filmmaking, but there's still plenty of jobs. So I think this is just the tipping point, and we can guess, we can theorize, but who knows?
Yeah. And it's not one to one, but when CG really came in hard, you saw a very similar thing, and people rejected the idea of a computer, created character. Oh, that's not a real actor, and there was a whole hubbub about it until people got used to it, and now they love it, and it's absolutely everything. I mean, there's still a human being behind that creation, but I guess you could kind of say the same thing for this. AI is not creating something out of nothing. I'm prompting it. I'm sending it in a direction, and I am feeding it the emotion that I want it to then convey back to me. So I am instructing it with my experience to get back what I, want to convey. And like you even said, then it's a process of iteration for me to look at, no, that's not what I meant. That's not what I meant. That's not what I meant. When I work with an actor, that's outside of myself. I have to request through prompts what it is this scene is, what I think should happen, so we can get to the thing where I'm now expressing myself through someone else entirely. So it's not a huge jump to you're expressing yourself through something else. Again, it's not from a human experience kicking that back to you, but you can still control that. A musical instrument is just a device until I play the note. So it's all just fascinating.
Yeah, it really is, and I think no one really knows where we're going with it. We can stay along for the ride, or get left behind. Ryan, I just want to thank you really so much for coming on and chatting with us for now. Hopefully you'll be back at another point soon. We can have a big longer chat about something else.
Absolutely.
But if you want to see what Ryan has been getting up to, obviously head over to filmriot.com. Am I correct?
Yep.
There we go. And if you're not subscribed to their YouTube channel as well, do it. Do it now. In fact, don't do it now. Hit the thumbs up button on this stream, then go over and subscribe to the Film Riot YouTube.
Priorities. Gotta have the priorities.
Absolutely. Ryan, thanks a lot again. We'll talk soon. All right.
Thanks. Appreciate
Thanks,
it.
Ryan.
Thanks,
Okay.
guys.
Cool. Well, let's give away some stuff now. I've been threatening to give away some stuff for a while, and we haven't got around to it. So I'll tell you what we're going to do. We're going to give away a copy of Optics right now to one lucky winner, someone who has had the foresight to go over to borisfxlive.com, scroll down to the bottom of the webpage, and enter their details. So, mission control. Do we have our first winner? Well, we do. We do. Congratulations to Cecil Hooker. Congratulations to you. Cecil, you have won an annual subscription of Optics, $99 value. Congratulations to you. We have loads more prizes coming up as well. In fact, Brian, should we do it? Should we give another one away now? Come on, we got 3 Optics. If you're ready. Here we go. Our second license is going to Robin Johnson. Robin, congratulations. If you're in the chat, say congratulations to Robin as well. Well done. You have won an Optics annual subscription as well. We'll be in contact with all of the winners in the next couple of days, telling you how to claim your prize. If you haven't joined in the competition yet, well, what are you waiting for? Head over to borisfxlive.com, scroll down to the bottom of the page, enter your details. Full terms and conditions can be found there. We're giving away more Optics. We're also giving away a copy of the Boris FX Suite. So that's a biggie. And that's all coming up a little bit later. But let's get on with the show, I think. I'm going to turn it over to Nick now. And Nick, what are you going to be showing us?
I'm going to kind of take everyone through a photo cutout workflow where I've taken a few images that were created in Midjourney. They were upscaled. I'm going to bring them into Photoshop and just show some basic treatments of setting up there, and then bringing it into After Effects for some final treatments using continuum-based effects to kind of bring the photo to life, so to speak. And it's a nice little compliment to what you did yesterday, Ross, on the Boris FX Learn channel, where you were talking about cinemagraphs, but you were particularly focused inside of Photoshop. So this is just adding even more movement with the tools that are inside of After Effects, and that could be equally replicated in another application like Motion if you're in the Final Cut spree of things. So should I start sharing my screen? I think I should.
Oh, that sounds like a very good idea.
I think I'm going to do that. So yeah, and everyone see After Effects okay here without the infinite tunnel?
Yep, you're looking good. And, I did like the infinite tunnel, but that's looking good now.
Okay, great. And here we'll start off with a story. This was one of several prompts I've done inside of Midjourney. I was exploring these kind of futuristic neon scenes with characters in the foreground. And ideally, this was up-resed just with the basic Midjourney availability, and I used a couple prompts to get it in the 69 aspect ratio, which I will be showing later on in this stream. Ross is also going to talk about even taking this further, where you could upscale it using other AI software to get massive prints from some of the stuff that's being created by these AI art engines. But here I've already taken this layer, and ideally what I'd like to do is sort of create it into a series of layers, and in the areas where I make these so-called cutouts, paint it in the background so that I can have some camera movement. And when I set this up, I actually cut out 3 parts of this image. I cut out the subject here in the foreground, the car, as well as the building. And for most of it, I actually just used the new object tool inside of Photoshop, the object selection tool. It's quite incredible where this has come, sort of very similar to the quick selection tool, but even better in noticing objects. All I do is try to get the general area of where an object is, or circumference that entire area, and you'll see Photoshop does its magic here. It's kind of already made a selection for me to then create my cutout. And then from this, just simply by right-clicking, selecting and masking this image and trying to get it perfect around the edges. So there's several things here where I can work with building the cutout, but I'm just going to add a little bit of radius in terms of edge detection here. And one of the most important settings, besides also playing around with the smoothness and the feather of how you'd like this shape to be, would be down here. So I will, depending on my workflow, spit this out as a new layer, or if I thought that I was going to refine this even further, a new layer with a layer mask that I could then easily select and apply to other areas of my scene. So yeah, this was the workflow for both the same thing for the car as well as the building that you see here, where I separated these into a series of different layers. So now you can see here the layer that was created on top with my character here. And I still have just underneath here the image with the background. So once I made a copy of all of the elements that I wanted to do, I started to try to clone out as best as possible the background here. And since I wanted to do this as quickly as I could, in many cases I tried to rely on content-aware fill. And there's a couple cool techniques that I try to use. Number one, when you have your layer mask or a separate layer of the image that you cut out, you can always command click it, and it's going to remember that selection. You could then select the original image underneath, or a duplicate copy if you want to be protecting that. And under the selection menu, there's an option here called Modify Expand, where you can expand on this selection just to be a little bit bigger than what you actually selected, and then perform a content-aware fill. So one area that you can do this is from the Edit menu, and we should see down here content-aware fill, where based on certain selections in the image, it's going to try to clone out that area. So usually this gives you a starting place, and then you can go in and refine with the clone tool and other tools to perfect the moving out of, or the removal of that image. You could also, of course, paint here to make sure certain things are included or not included in the selection. So that was kind of the Photoshop process. Here I'll just show you at least where content-aware fill got me to this point, and then it was further refined with the clone tool, depending on how much you're going to zoom into that image. And I took all of these layers that I object selected, and in some cases used the quick selection tool, and I brought them into After Effects for a final treatment. I have a little proxy here to show you some of the effects that I used here. It's down res, so it's not playing at its fullest quality, but I'm using about 6 effects inside of Continuum inside of After Effects. And to show this one treatment, let me first of all turn off the proxy so we can see the original, and start to dissect the layers that were brought inside of After Effects. So I brought in the Photoshop file containing all of the layers, and then I automatically added a camera to the scene, made the layers 3D, and separated their positions out in Z space. So I'm just pressing P right now, and you should be able to see if I enlarge this, the separate Z positions, so that there's a little bit of depth space between each of the images, and then did some offsetting in terms of the X and Y value to make sure that they were positioned in the exact same space where they were. And then I started to muck with the look of the scene a bit. And one of my favorite tools for this, or some of this, was I noticed that the machine learning didn't actually create any reflections, and I wanted to have some reflections brought into the scene. So we can see that here if I solo the woman layer let me just see if I can turn on the grid background, that there is an actual reflection here. And for that, I used BCC plus reflection. And one really cool thing about this effect is it will use your comp camera in certain instances when it's on a 2D layer. By playing around with the reflection softness, as well as the X and Y position, I did this to the building, as well as the car. You can start to see some of the reflections made out here on the floor. Another thing that I did in this treatment, and just because of the bright neon, one of my favorite go-to effects inside of Continuum is BCC plus film glow. So I applied this glow, and I'll just turn this on and off so that you guys can see it. And based on a certain threshold, which determines in some cases which bright pixels are involved in the glow, along with an intensity and radius, I got the glow look that I was looking for, which, since it was already fairly bright, I didn't want it to be too much of a glow. I also then added a very subtle wiggle expression. If we take a look here, onto the glow so that the light would be flickering throughout the entire shot. So those are some of the treatments that I did specifically just to the layers. And then at the very end, I started to, I wanted to have a look for this overall piece. So breaking down this adjustment layer that I added on top of everything, one thing that I added was a very simple gradient, which was BCC plus sunset. And that would be better to see if I turned on that actual adjustment layer, because everything is soloed right now. And I'll just toggle this off and on so that you can see it. And with all BCC plus effects, this is worth mentioning in terms of a workflow. I've hopped over to another comp, and I'm going to do a search for this effect here in After Effects. BCC plus, and I'll follow that by sunset. And I'll find this in the grads and tints category. Once I apply the sunset, this is the default, but a great place to explore this and some of the other effects I'll show you is inside the effects editor, where there's several presets already set up for you. And this is basically just a 3-color gradient where you have these lovely on-screen controls that you can take advantage of for both linear, for a linear gradient here, whether top to bottom or left to right. So this just allowed for a nice little color treatment here on the image. One other great thing about the effects editor in general, besides being able to see these presets, is to do comparisons. In this case, I'll just show you an A and B comparison. So the original image next to the sunset gradient. We could even take snapshots in the process and bring up those snapshots as well so that you can compare the snapshot, the original, and the effect that you're currently looking at. The last thing about this particular view in the effects editor is, of course, when you build, let's say, a new gradient using the parameters here on the right-hand side, you can make adjustments, of course, in terms of color. And once you find something you like, click this little paper icon here at the top to save your own custom preset. And this custom preset happens to be, you can share it with anyone who has Continuum. So whether it be Premiere or if they're working in Avid, that effect is going to be cross-platform. So I'll just apply that, but that's how I went out to search for not only a grad filtered look, but also a film stock look that I referenced to kind of get a 70s theme. And this was with BCC plus film stocks. So same type of process, went here inside the effects editor. The only difference is film stocks is just extremely heavy with all the different types of looks that you have. And I would say that there are two main categories. One is film stocks based on actual movies. The other is based on specific types of film like Ilford or Codec. But with all of these presets, totally worth exploring. And one of the things that I love is the fact that it adds some grain in several of these presets that you can use for your final look. So on top of those two effects, the only other two to talk about is smear blur. I think it creates a really nice, a unique blur, unlike some other blurs that I've used in other applications, as well as BCC plus Prism for some chromatic aberration. And that's how I ended up with this final neon scene here inside of After Effects. Keep in mind that the proxy has been lowered in terms of its quality. So the only other thing I wanted to mention with this sort of photo cutout workflow, I did something similar with another shot that you guys can see here, but there was one small issue, and that is I didn't really have three things that I could cut out in this shot. Really, we have the main subject in the foreground, and we have a blurred out background. So inside of Photoshop, I cut out the subject, and then I tried to clone in that missing area as much as possible, but I was left with just these two layers. So for this particular treatment, to kind of add a bit of depth and movement in this shot, I introduced a few things, and one to talk about is just sort of creating your own displacement layer. Now, there are some third-party applications that you can use to do this, but a displacement layer, if I sort of scrub through my project, you can see a bit of movement happening with my subject in particular here, specifically in her nose and her lips, because they're closest, or what I've identified to be as close to the camera as possible. All this involved inside of After Effects was really creating masked areas and identifying through color what is close to the camera and what is further away. What is close to the camera is going to be close to the color white as possible. What is furthest to the camera would be black, and then all of the gray values in between. So by doing that, and then just these, you can see this amazing artwork that I've created here, but some really simple displacement with some of her facial features at the front, and then minus the things which were further in the back, identified by those gray values. I took that displacement layer and then blurred it inside the comp here. And if I just turn off the proxy, you can see what I ended up with. And then I had this face layer, has a displacement map effect on it, which is referencing the displaced layer in After Effects to kind of create some movement on both the horizontal and vertical displacement. So by selecting the luminance layer. So that's how I added a little bit more of dimension. And I would say the other thing which I love Continuum for is using particle illusion. So I was actually talking to you earlier, Ben. You can see here some dust type particles floating in the foreground here of this image, not to mention a few other effects at work. But if I hop inside of particle illusion, this was just a simple preset that was used. So the preset was called Seed and Clouds. And if you can, by the way, download a standalone version of particle illusion for free to try if you'd like, or of course use it in the Continuum arsenal. One thing I like to do if you're first coming out here is to browse a series of presets. And then from that, I ended up finding this awesome Seeds and Clouds preset, which I thought would just be great to have some of these particles floating around in the foreground. So from that, I double clicked the asset and I found that the clouds was a bit too strong. So I selected that actual layer, lowered its opacity, and then specifically for the pollen that you see floating here, the movement was a bit much, so I lowered the velocity and a few of the other movement values so that it would be a lot more subtle through the camera movement. But here, by simply selecting the different parts that make up that particle system, you can adjust it to your actual scene. And that was done here with the velocity value. So let me just apply what I've already done, and we can see that floating around and then in a separate area in Z space just above the other layers. And then the final treatment of this was just 3 actual BCC plus effects. So film stocks again for sort of a darker look than the original. I'll just turn that on and off so that you can see it. Smear blur as well, working on the edges of the image. And then a lens distortion effect, sort of to give almost like a closer distorted view. While you could, of course, use it to remove lens distortion, I used it for the exact opposite in this treatment. So this was something that I was exploring with Midjourney, that photo cutout treatment from Photoshop to After Effects, and then using some of those continuum effects for the actual finishing after the movement was all done.
Cool. Excellent stuff. And that little trick with the displacement map is one that I've used, time and time again. It's a really, really good one if you're wanting to add a bit of movement or perspective to still objects. I used to actually do that for sort of product shots that just needed just a tiniest amount of movement without having to do any 3D modeling. Just go, yeah, we'll cheat it. Very, very cool.
Yeah, it's a really nice way to kind of bring your photos to life using that displacement, and by some simple duplication tricks inside of After Effects and then being able to separate those masks, you can get some really good movement. And I find it a nice, lovely push and pull process to find the right amount of white, gray, or black to perfect the amount of movement and displacement. And then the second part to that is, after you've selected or placed the displacement map, is how far do you move those vertical and horizontal sliders. And in many cases, I'll try to ramp them up first just to make sure that there is movement, but then find myself always going back to make it more subtle, so that you're like, you see it, but it's not overpowering, so to speak, in the image. And then after seeing, chatting with Ross, seeing some of your examples of cinemagraphs that you've been sharing on social media, it's so cool just to be able to add some particles to these scenes, and have them bring in another level of realism to like a photo. So I think that that's cool that inside of Continuum, or even inside of Optics.
Yeah, if you haven't seen Ross's presentation yet, it's on the Boris FX Learn channel, and it's part of the Office Hours series that we do every week. So it's an hour just to sort of sit down and noodle with an idea while chatting to people. So it's a lot of fun if you've got any sort of spare time on a Tuesday afternoon. And we're worldwide, so basically that Tuesday afternoon changes meaning between weeks. So have a little look out for the Boris FX Live channel to find out when we're next live on that. But it's only an hour long, definitely worthwhile checking out. While we're talking about Ross and what he's done, Ross, you've got another quick tip for us, I believe.
Yeah, sure, Ben. I'm excited to show you some cool stuff here, and I'll make it really quick to keep things moving along here. If you guys can see me, I mentioned earlier that I've been playing with Midjourney and for a couple months now, and one of my goals is really to kind of like create something that I thought was different than some of the images that I've been seeing. Anyone who knows me knows I'm a massive music geek. And so I'll just kind of really quickly show you. I wanted to actually take this work, and I'll kind of show you if you can sort of see here. I've been making prints, physical prints, and playing with the actual quality and process to create really nice, high resolution, very large scale prints. So I'm just going to kind of show you the process that I've been using. And I know Ryan mentioned Topaz Gigapixel, so I'm also going to show you that. So let me just show you a screen. This is going to be a very quick little presentation, but hopefully this will kind of make a connection between the AI digital work and a process to actually create something physical. So here we go. I'm going to share my screen here. And let me know if you can see my screen.
We are there. Yes.
Cool. So yeah, so here I'm in Adobe Bridge, and just kind of show you a couple of these fun images. My goal was to kind of not create like something like fantasy, but create these weird, surreal, music-inspired sculptures. And I actually used a lot of locations that are near where I live in the Hudson Valley. So there's like a massive guitar sculpture. Here's like a crazy boombox sculpture. A couple just really interesting. These are the raw images that came out of Midjourney. Couple fun ones. That's cool, like a massive abstract record, or weird guitar sculptures. I mentioned the Hudson River. I live right on the Hudson River, and that's like the Hudson River mist and winter kind of thing with a massive guitar sculpture or a massive bass sculpture. Anyways, lots of fun to play with this kind of stuff. It's a weird drum set. Let's go back here. Now in Bridge, you can see these images. If you look down here where my mouse is, I got these out of Midjourney, and they're 1024 by 1024 at 72 DPI. And that is not going to be good enough to print at a high resolution. So what I started using was Topaz Gigapixel. There's a lot of AI solutions out there, and upscalers. I find that Topaz it's really, really high quality. You just go to File, browse for image. This is a particular image here. And we're basically have the setting here. I'm scaling this up 2 times right now, and I'll zoom into the image. And hopefully this will come through on the stream. Where you're going to see is on the left is the original, and on the right is the upscaled and sharpened. And you have different AI models here. So I have this set to Art and CG is the AI model. I'm going to upscale this 6 times. And let's just get a sense of what this is doing here. And I think it does a really amazing job. Again, right here on the left side, you can see that's the original. If I slide a little bit over, it's bringing back this really crisp detail. And we've literally upscaled this image 6 times. So from 1024 to 6144. So my goal is to get this to an image size that I can print. And most printing services for digital printing, you want to get your image to 300 DPI. Okay, so as we know, like this stuff looks great on video screens at 72 DPI, but for printing, we really want to get it up to that 300 DPI, and we want to get that the file size up into the high thousands, depending on how big you want to print your image. So let's look at the image in Photoshop really quick. That's my the raw output. Actually, this one right here. This is my raw output in Photoshop, and this is now 6,144 at 72 DPI. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take that image and just change the image size. I'm going to change it to 300 DPI, and then make it a file size that I like. Basically like what is my print size? I'm not going to print it at 85 inches by 85 inches. That's quite big, but maybe I might make it like 24 by 24 or something like that. And you're going to see the quality. Photoshop does a great job of basically converting the 72 DPI to 300 DPI, and it keeps that quality really good. So that's really cool. I have a 7200 by 7200, which kind of converts to here in the US anyways, 24 inches by 24 inches as the actual physical size of this file. Let's look at this really quick in Photoshop. Here's my original image that has been upscaled now. And then what I like to do is I like to kind of really zoom in here and find, this AI stuff is awesome, but you'll find artifacts and you find areas that you might not necessarily like right here. I thought I didn't really like that seam. So I ended up painting that out and kind of making that a little bit darker. Let's zoom out a little bit. You using all kinds of Photoshop tools of content aware or just cloning and stuff like that, cleaning it up. And then up here, I actually took this into Optics because I have a lot of fun with editing the images in Optics before I print them, a little before and after. And last thing, I'll go ahead and launch this. It's going to be a little bit slow because we are working at a very, very high resolution image, for print, but Optics can handle it, which is nice. Here's the Optics interface. If you've never seen Optics, it's going to ask me, do I want to bring in that project that I was working on? I'm going to say, yes, let's go ahead. I'm not going to really do a big Optics demo, but I'll kind of just walk you through the layers here. And you can sort of see you'll see like the before and after in Optics, where I've kind of made it a little bit more contrasty, did some color correction, added some nice sapphire rays, stuff like that. And if you look over here on the left-hand side of the image, I'll double click. That's the original image. I've done some enhancing down here with the mask. I've added a little bit of haze. That just dramatically kind of makes the image kind of a little bit more contrasty and pops it in. I added an ultra glow effect, which you might see if I, let's go in here. Looking in this area before the ultra glow, after the ultra glow. And let's see what else. You'll see the rays. I add some light rays in and use some masks to isolate the rays just to that area, those sapphire rays. And then finally at the top, here's a glow darks and then a film stocks effect. Nick mentioned the film stocks effect, but I really love this the film stocks effect that are in Optics or also in Continuum, where you have lots of movie looks and color processing effects. And let's change this to like something else, and I can pretty quickly find a look that I like, play with the opacity, things like that. If I like that look, I'm going to hit apply, and then we'll be right back in Photoshop and ready to print this at a higher resolution. I do want to say, show you one last thing as this exits out here, is you might be curious about, where could you print this, or, different online services are offering different print qualities. This is rendering. Let's just let that go. There we go. We're back in Optics, and we've just rendered this image here. It's still thinking. There we go. So we have our before and our after. So if I bring up a browser here, just the last thing I want to mention is different options for printing, and maybe even selling your artwork if you want to get motivated and do something cool with this. I actually created a shop on a site called printful.com, which they will drop ship. They will print and drop ship your artwork, so you could actually make an Etsy shop or sell this, on your own website. So it's really actually quite easy to do this thing. And I did some tests with this service, and I thought the quality was really quite good. You can also use something as generic as Shutterfly if you wanted to. You might not get as high quality. If you're really looking to do some really high quality photo printing, here's a site that I found that is quite good, and that's called mpix.com. They're not getting me any affiliate income here. These are just sites that I kind of found myself in like. So hopefully that was kind of a interesting, a quick exploration into doing something with the AI art that was a little bit more, practical. Taking these images and actually printing them. So that's it. Hopefully that was cool.
That was great, Ross. That was really good. Really, really informative. Yeah. And I think, like from experience, there's actually nothing better than seeing some of this stuff that you've created, especially if you've worked on it, further and actually printing it out and seeing it in your hand. There is something when it gets a bit more tactile. There's definitely something special about it.
Yeah, I enjoyed the process quite a lot of actually making a physical object and exploring with the different settings in Photoshop and the different image scales and trying to really tune in what I thought would make a nice image. And, like my brother's a musician, I'm going to design an album cover for him using this kind of technique. So, there is a practicality to actually using some of this stuff, which is really fun.
Mm.
Ross, I was curious, how long did the process take you from conceptualizing that kind of idea or concept to printing the artwork? I'm sure it took, of course, longer as you were discovering along the way, but yeah, just curious about your overall process and the time spent.
Yeah, well, I mean, as you guys know that
Yeah.
Midjourney and AI art is a deep hole that you can fall into, right? So
Yeah.
it's so much fun, but you're never done because you can keep iterating and trying to fine tune. And the fact, I would say this to everyone, don't install Discord on your phone because you can lie back in bed or on your couch and you can be doing this work. And is it work or is it just fun? Is the AI driving us or are we driving it? I don't know. But I played with this kind of thing for a couple weeks, and I had a lot of different ideas about music sculptures. I just thought that was kind of a neat kind of concept until I kind of zeroed in on that. I don't know. Lots of fun stuff. Show you one last one. Kind of a cool, massive boom box, but fun stuff.
That's very cool. It is very cool.
Yeah.
I think like we do have other sessions that we're going to get to today. We've got some more stuff where we're looking at images and overpainting, and also actually looking at Midjourney and sort of getting a bit more of a sort of expert user look at Midjourney prompts as well. But I mean, I do have a couple of questions I'd like to throw out. Maybe just one question to throw out to the group right now, which is it's probably a big one, and it's about the issue of copyright and rights, and what these different services expect and take from you. I mean, Ross, do you have a bit more of an insight into what some of the sort of popular ones are doing at the moment?
Yeah, it's interesting. As I mentioned earlier, Stable Diffusion stuff is open source, right? So it's like that image. If I created those images in Stable Diffusion, anyone could pick up those images and they could do whatever they want. They could make their own Etsy shop and sell this stuff. So I think that's a really, really interesting concept. About the ownership. Same, be aware if you're exploring this, each of these different applications does have different kind of copyright issues behind it. Like if you look at Midjourney, for example, I believe they can, if you're using Midjourney in the public forums, they have the right to your prompts and all the users have the right to your prompts. So it's definitely, it's interesting. I think it brings up a lot of emotional issues for people who have been spent their life creating and developing their own skill sets. I know some people who design book covers and they're very worried, coming back to the earlier conversation. So, the concept of the rights to this stuff is very interesting. And I think, as I mentioned earlier, this is just the tipping point. I do think that there's in certain countries is actually like a little bit more thought is happening, and there's various movements happening across different companies and how they want to handle it. I think someone posted earlier in our internal chat that Getty Images came out with saying something today. So it's all just happening really, really rapidly. So I would say to anyone who is just exploring this area to be very aware of these issues and stay focused. And you have to read every day.
You certainly do. Yeah.
I posted a couple Midjourney images on LinkedIn, and this issue of copyright was a major discussion point. I thought it'd be just interesting to read verbatim what the Midjourney rights are for images, and that's by using the services you grant to Midjourney, its successors, and assigns a perpetual, worldwide, non-exclusive, sub-licensable, no-charge, royalty-free, irrevocable copyright license to reproduce, prepare derivative works of, publicly display, publicly perform, sub-license, and distribute text and image prompts you input into the services or assets produced by the service at your direction. The license survives termination of this agreement by any party for any reason. So, going into Midjourney, I'm glad that you pointed out, Ross, that when you're in those public Discord channels, people are going to be copying and then pasting your prompts and stuff like that. I will say that there is a way that you can pay for your prompts to be private once you start with a paid service, but it is, you do not own the copyright to the text or the images from what I've seen. But I will say, the emotional reactions that I've had to Midjourney art so far are people who have taken that art and it becomes a piece to their overall creation. Going back to Ryan Connolly, who was here at talking from Film Riot, where he was producing backgrounds and then shooting those foreground elements and telling it within the framework of the story, I thought was great. And then you taking that story, Ross, and then making final touches onto your images in Photoshop, and then scaling it up, even potentially adding new things to the image using some of those paint tools and making it your own, is definitely something I think where it kind of takes on its own life.
Yeah, it's
I
fun.
agree.
Like
and
a
I
lot
think
of
that's where the thing is. Sorry, go for it, Ross.
No, I was just going to say, a lot of my friends who I've shown these photo sculpture kind of imagery, they want to see these things in real life. So it's very interesting to think about using the tools to just as concept, for other kinds of art.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And this goes all the way back to what we were saying, like right at the very beginning of the stream, about using this as a sort of stepping stone for creations rather than as a final creation itself. And in some ways, it actually seems fair enough that Midjourney takes a certain amount of the copyright, because what you're feeding in the prompts and you're putting in that sort of effort, and you're guiding it in many ways. But if there's not a sort of transformative motion after that, then the inputs that you've created at that up to that point might be smaller than the export that you get out of it. So the inputs you put in are smaller than the output. But I think by doing something transformative and creative with it after that, then it becomes your own. Then it becomes actually a piece of art that you should own copyright to. And that maybe we'll take a look at that and discuss that a little bit later as well. We're going to have to take a little break here. Just a little a sort of competition break. We do have lots more coming up. We've got a little session with myself, talking about how we do overpaint with Optics and Photoshop. And also we'll be talking with Nick a little bit more about some expert Midjourney prompts. But I want to give some stuff away. If we're ready to give some stuff away, we still have time for you to join in the Boris FX Live competition by heading over to borisfxlive.com, scrolling to the bottom of the page, and obviously entering your details right there. Full terms and conditions do apply, but we still have some big prizes coming up for us today. So the first one we're going to be giving away, which is going to be our third copy of Optics, is going away to one lucky winner who is coming up now. Let's see. Our third winner of Optics is Ishai Hashlili. Ishai, congratulations. You have won an annual subscription of Optics, and you are joining the two other people who have already won Optics today. We'll be in contact with all of our winners in the next couple of days to give you your prize. But you've still got time into the competition, and we have an annual subscription of Boris FX Suite, which is everything we make, including Optics and Continuum that Nick shows you, and Sapphire and Mocha Pro and Silhouette. It's the big boy. It's a very, very good prize going away to one lucky winner. Get your name in the hat now while you still can. Also, if you're enjoying the chat that we're doing at the moment, don't forget to hit the thumbs up on the stream and like it. If you want to see more of this sort of stuff, you can also subscribe to the Boris FX YouTube channel if you haven't already done so. But do it now. Don't do it in 5 minutes because you'll forget. You're right here. Do it now. Okay. Well, let's move on from the silliness. And I'm going to be looking at a topic that's quite close to my heart now, which is taking some of the images that we've been working with and creating with these AI art engines, and actually, doing something with them that is a little bit different. Let me just cut over to my screen, and this is my original image. This is something that came out of Midjourney, and as you can see, it's pretty cool. I like it. It's very much in the style that I was going for, but it's not perfect. We have certain things like there's a lot of little dots on the floor, which are weird reflection-y type things, and I don't know what's going on with the head. So I decided that I was going to just sort of overpaint this a little bit and sort of just fix it up so that it would fit my mood a little bit more. And this is what I came up with in the end. And let's sort of break this down a little bit. So let's take off all of these and let's come down here. So here was the original again, and I just did some initial cleanup. So this was all done just in Photoshop, using a combination of things like the healing brush and and just the regular brush and smudge tools, just my regular favorites. Then I came in and I thought, okay, the legs are looking a little bit spindly. Let's see what we can do with the legs. So I did an initial little touch up on the legs. I thought that's looking like something, but let's see what else we can do with this, and do some more little touch-ups on the robot. Again, just using things like the brush tool just to brush in a few more lights and make a few little changes going on down there. Nothing too crazy. And I thought, that head, his little squashed head. You know those little robots that you push the little head down, it pops up at some indeterminate time and scares you. Well, that's what this one does. It came out and it popped up its head and started to scare me. So once I'd done the sort of initial kind of changes to this, so it's just mainly kind of just a little small bits of cleanup. Now's the time where I would head into Optics to sort of start finishing these things up a little bit. And that's why I'm going to come in here. So I've got everything sort of bounced down onto a single layer. I've called it ready for Optics because I'm very well organized like that. I've made this into a smart layer. This is something I always do when working in Optics. Just it means I've got flexibility to come back and forth and make any sort of changes that I want to, if I need to at a later point. So we're coming into Optics. And then I wait for my hard drive to wake up. Maybe I should have just woken everything up a little bit before, just giving it a little prod. So let's try again. Let's come in. It's now awake. And there we go. Let's open this up. I do not want to apply the previous filters. Thank you very much. Okay, so inside of Optics, I've got like a huge number of effects that I can start to work with here, and my workflow generally sort of breaks down into different stages. The first stage is all about doing kind of small sort of color changes, like balancing out colors and starting to lift things up. I mean, the colors themselves I'm kind of happy with. I'd probably want the red on the neon looking a little bit brighter. So let's come in. It's one of a sort of a low key favorite effect. It's a little one called enhancing. And really what this does is it starts to enhance certain of primary colors. So it's making up a little matte, which we can see here. And I can change the area that it's working on. And then I could just change how much it enhances those colors there. So it's just giving me a nice big little red neon boost there. So I like that. I'll leave that there. The next thing I think I want to do is try to build off this idea of this being shiny. Because as I was painting out all of the little dots that were on the floor, I started thinking, what sort of surface is this floor made out of? Is it shiny? Well, yeah, it kind of is. And we've got a little bit of a shadow going down here, but I sort of wanted to make that a little bit bigger. So in Optics, I can start to stack effects up really easily. So if we go to the top left-hand corner and just add in another layer here, I can start to build up my effects. And I'm going to come to Image. I am going to come to Image, and I'm going to come to S Warp Transform. A warp transform lets us, transform the image around. It's sort of, you scale it up, shift it around, set distance, all that sort of stuff. But I just really want to just flop it over. And this is something that someone asked in I think the last time we did an Optics live stream, is there a way of easily flipping and flopping within Optics? And yes, there is, using S Transform. And I recorded a little short tutorial based off of the question that was in that live stream there, because we do like hearing people's questions. So what I want to do here is just kind of just flip it down and sort of move it down to the bottom here. So I'm going to use a blend mode so we can start to see what's what. Multiply, that's going to be a bit harsh, but at least we're going to see what's what. So let's bring that down. The ground plane's fit in there. There we go. Now, obviously, as an image, this stops being very useful if you can't see anything. So maybe I'll change that blend mode to soft light. Yep, that's still really dark though. But never fear. All of these filters, we can start to add in different masks to it. So I can come in with my gradient mask here, and now it's only sort of going to show me the effect going upwards. Let's swap that around. There we go. So now we've got a gradient going from the the bottom to the top. So that's kind of all right. Sort of like that. Maybe we'll just bring this up a little bit, or tell you what we'll do. Let's flip it over again. I can even bring this down over here. So now it's sort of just coming in and sort of fading out a little bit. I like that. And we can use multiple masks, which in this case is absolutely vital. So if I just come in, I'll add a spot mask here as well. It's a little bit difficult to see how these masks are interacting. So I'm going to come over and go into my mask view, and I can see how these are going to interact. So just change the interaction in the top left-hand corner. Now I can see this is just going to work how I want it to. So sort of just bring that in a little bit there. Maybe let's turn off the mask, see how that's working. There we go. So I'm focused solely on looking at the shadow down here. Yeah, that'll do me. Let's mix it back in a little bit. There we go, lovely. Cool. That's good. And at this point here, I'm kind of going, yeah, he's all right. But do you know what would make him even cooler? Lens flare. Lens flare just makes everything better. Basically, yeah, whenever I'm in a sort of creative famine, what I'll do is I'll head into the light category and just start playing around with stuff in the light category here, because there's so much fun stuff going on, including lens flare. So anyone who's ever seen me talk about lens flares before, which is anyone who's ever heard me talk, I think, knows my love of lens flares. So I'm just going to come in here a little bit, and I'm going to make my robot feel a little bit creepier. We got tons of little presets. Going down here, I want something red. Do I want a laser web or red laser? Oh, red laser. Yes, that's what we want. So let's come in. Let's take that down. Just adjust that up a little bit. Nice and small, but nice and hot. There we go. I mean, you don't get much more evil robot than that. There we go. Cool. Let's right click on this. Let's duplicate up this layer. So we've got a second lens flare. Let's shift that over to the other eye. Nice and gentle. There we go. Yeah, I'll change this up just a little bit so they're not looking exactly the same, because you know they wouldn't do. Evil robot eyes, they never look exactly the same, in my experience anyway. Let's come back to that other one there. There we go. So we can see both of them up. And what we do on this one, I was rotating, wasn't I? Yeah, so let's rotate it in the other direction. Proper nicely evil little robot there. So let's have a look at a quick before and after. Yeah, that's starting to shape up. Cool. Okay. I'm sort of, if you watched Nick's little session earlier, he's a big fan of glows. I'm a big fan of glows as well, and I'm going to use S Ultra Glow on this next bit here, just to try and really, you know, hit that neon, you know, really hard. Now again, we've got loads of presets to start with, just to see if anything hits our fancy. Soft mister, maybe. That usually gets me in the right position. What I might do here is actually just fiddle about a tiny amount with the glow width, just to make that inner glow a little bit hotter. So that means I do have to adjust the brightness there, but we could take it a bit further. How's that looking? That's a bit subtle. It's a bit subtle for me. So what I'm going to do, yeah, let's have this going in the other direction. Let's have a nice big Y-shaped glow. So I'm coming to my afterglow. Stretch this out vertically instead of horizontally. I think that's gonna be nice. Right, horizontal streaks goodbye. Vertical streaks. Oh, hello. Yes, that's good. No, I like that. I think that's getting somewhere. Okay. Now, when I was looking at that, it's like, okay, starting to look a little bit spooky. Can we make it look even more kind of mean and a little bit cruel? And I thought, oh, what's strange here? Well, nothing better than going into my lens distort here and trying to figure out something around about this, this area here. I do like lens distortion. I'm a big fan of lens distortion. We have a few actually we can choose from. We've got like regular lens distortion, which is actually kind of nice. Or we got, the S-warp fisheye as well, which lets us do a few other little bits and bobs, but it doesn't really matter which one I choose. Basically just trying to go for a kind of a bit of an uncanny look. We're starting to get somewhere. Now, when I'm coming in here, at this point, the warp fisheye is probably in the wrong place. So at any point, I can just come down here and maybe have my fisheye going beneath my glow and take a little look at that. So we've got the glow kind of not warping, and that looks better, I think. So stack in order, whatever we do to change it is really, really nice and easy. Final finishing touch, obviously. Gonna pop into the film lab. Gonna choose something that I always choose. Again, every time. I can't change who I am. Basically, this is my workflow for real projects, and this is also my workflow when I'm showing you how to do this stuff as well. So I'm going to come into film stocks. I'm going to take the opacity down to 50% so that we get the, we get the feeling of the film stock that we're going for without it being completely overpowering. And I find this actually gives me a bit more sort of, opportunity and options. Maybe I'll just tap the brightness up a little bit there. And I'm kind of happy with where we're at. Or maybe that warp fisheye. Last little thing, actually. Going to come in. I'm going to add a matte to my warp fisheye, not to my film stocks, Ben. Not what you want. Add a little spot in there and invert it. Move it over here. So basically everything outside of the robot is getting warped up. Nice. Cool. So I'm happy with that. I'm going to hit apply. It's going to process it out. We'll see the before and after. It's certainly making a little, a bit of a change. We could come in, I would actually come in and make sure that my mask of the warp fisheye is a little bit better than this one, because we're getting something horrible coming on with that line. But that's the basic idea. That's the general idea of how I'd start to come in and take my original picture and start to transform it, start to overpaint it, and start to, transform it into something that's much more my own. And, in relation to that little discussion that we just had about copyright, basically once I've transformed it, Midjourney might have my original, but this transformed one, this is 100% me. Cool. And, with that, please keep your questions coming if that's what we're seeing. We have a lot of optics tutorials available on the Boris FX website if you want to learn more about optics, but I think that's just a nice sort of quick way of me working with an image and sort of transforming it into something else that's more my style. So thank you for that. Any
Great
questions
stuff,
from the peanut gallery?
No, not for me,
That's
Ben.
you two. Good stuff.
No.
No, good stuff. Definitely.
Oh, good. Thank you, Brian, for the tepid applause. No, I love that. No, thanks everyone. That was it's just it means so much hearing giving that applause. Cool. Oh no! And see, Nave made me sad. All right, I'll tell you what we're going to do then. We're going to move on to the final part of today's session. We're going to go back to Nick, and we're going to learn the magic art of Promptcraft with Midjourney. It's the new name of the session I've just created.
Yes, and well, I think we should keep it interactive. If you guys are game, I'll start sharing my screen and give a general demo of Midjourney. But since we've all had experience, it'll be great to get to learn from some of your prompts and stylistic descriptions as well. So I'm going to toggle and start to share my screen. Can everyone see that? Okay.
Yep, looking good.
Yep.
Okay, so I'm not in Midjourney Discord just yet. The Discord app, I'm actually on midjourney.com, which once you sign up, you have access to. And there's a few things that I wanted to mention here, which I think are great if you're just starting, and allow for a little bit of copying and exploration in a different light compared to just the Discord channel. So one thing, when you log into Midjourney through your web browser, is that there happens to be on the left-hand side here an actual community theme that you feed that you can access. And in that feed, you could target what artwork is currently rising in popularity on different channels, newer prompts, the top ones, and even start to look at this on a week or even an all-time basis. And for your first prompts, once you sign up for Midjourney for free, one thing you can do is once you find something inspirational is actually copy the prompt and then add some of your own text towards it. So that process, when we start to look at each of these images, you'll see, I don't know if I'm logged out on this page, but just bear with me 1 second. There's these three little dots at the bottom, and there's a few options here. One of them is to copy a command. And if you select copy a command and then head to Discord where this all happens, you can now paste this into your chat and get the exact prompt that someone entered. And I find that space, specifically the web browser, a lot easier to manage when it comes to some of the Discord threads that take place. So I'm going to be demoing in a private Midjourney bot channel, but I did want to mention something that when you first, if you're going with the free Midjourney subscription, something to keep in mind with is that they recommend that you go to one of several channels, and some of the channels here, besides being general, are in fact newbie-based channels. And this is a great way where you could enter one of these channels and then enter your first prompt. I will say the thing to keep in mind is trying to keep track of your image. Ross and Ben, have you guys had similar experiences where you've typed in your prompt, imagine, and then had to go back up in this thread or chat and tried to find your image the first time? So just something to keep in mind, you might lose some of the image prompts that you do on the free trial, and then having access to your web browser is a great way to find all of the stuff that you prompt Midjourney to do. Did you guys find something similar with those threads in particular?
Yeah, I could say that, you do have to do a lot of scrolling and kind of, because when you enter your prompt, you know, it's kind of like other people are working in the same space. So yeah, I definitely use the go back and forth with multiple tabs in a web browser. I also found that in the upper right-hand corner, that little icon next to the question mark, that up to the right there, that will help you. You can see like your last things that you could do there, and it's a quick way to jump back and forth as well.
Yeah, so definitely something to keep in mind, and great tip about that there, Ross. The inbox to try to keep track of your images, and I believe it's when you do have a paid subscription with them of some sort, you can have your own private Discord channel, which would a server, which would allow you to kind of not scroll as much, so to speak. So I'm going to start with like the bare basics, and you basically just have to tell the Midjourney bot to do something. So you'll see I'm in a direct message on my own channel with Midjourney. And the first thing that I would recommend that you type in for starting out is just the word help. And believe it or not, this will prompt you to give you a bunch of resources to get you started. One of those is your Midjourney guide, website, basic commands that you see here. And we're going to start off, as well as extra options and what type of subscription you currently have. Once you've discovered some of this information, it's like time to enter your first prompt. And that involves a slash followed by the word imagine and this word prompt. Usually Midjourney is pretty good at recognizing this prompt, so it will type most of it for you. Well, one thing to keep in mind is to put a colon after that, and then we're going to ask it to create something. So I'm going to type in something really simple right now, which is just the sky is red. And what we're going to see when I press return is Midjourney in the background is going to start to process 4 1:1 aspect ratio images. And for some reason, there we go. Okay, so we can see the process happening right there is currently 6%. It's going to go through this to give us these 4 versions of an image that we can either start to draw other variations from, enlarge, or take what Midjourney's done and say, you know what, I want to try something completely different, which we'll get into. But this is your basic first prompts, and these are essentially, when it hits that 100% mark, we'll see some of these options that take place. The great news is you can enter several different imagined prompts at once, and Midjourney will start to calculate them one by one there, going through the order that you entered it in. So everyone sees the 4 images of the sky is red that have been created by Midjourney in the 1:1 aspect ratio. One thing I can do is, okay, take a look here. You know what? What do you guys kind of like in terms of the images that have been produced? Which one do you like, Ben?
I kind of like number 4. I think 4 is speaking to me.
Yeah, so you sounded a little unsure, Ben. So what we're going to do is we're going to type in V4, which is going to give you 4 variations of photo number 4, which is in the lower right-hand quadrant. Now, I didn't hear Ross say anything, so I'm assuming he didn't like any of those images. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click this rotation icon to basically create a brand new rendition of the sky is red. Okay? So you can see here at 65%, and this is where the scrolling kind of can get in place, or it just created those 4 variations of V4. Ben, what are you thinking? What are you thinking here? Which one do you like?
I'm thinking 1, and I'm also thinking I'm loving that you've invited the Midjourney bot into your own private channel.
Yeah,
otherwise it's awful.
I gotta agree.
Yeah, trying to find it in that scroll.
I want in on this.
You're gonna go with 1 too.
Yeah,
so we got.
You woke me up.
So we got.
I like 1.
Okay, so we got 2 votes for 1. Saying that we like 1 and we're done. I'm gonna press U1, which enlarges the image. Once it enlarges the image, we then have an option to enlarge it again, and that's going to produce a fairly high quality PNG file, at least great enough to share on different social media platforms. But if you're looking to print it like Ross did, you'll definitely want to take it through an up-res process. But you can see how quick this is happening here in the background. And I'm demoing right now, but usually I am continuing to enter more and more prompts of this or maybe something else to see various results. And again, Midjourney is going one by one throughout these images, creating these. So here's the upscale. And here you can see, Ross, just for you down here, this is the new sky is red. Do you like any of those?
Yeah, I'll take number 3 for for $10.
For number 3. So we got U3 there, and I'm enlarging that. It's going through that process, and we can see it happening here in the background. Once this is done, we'll get yet another set of options. It hasn't done that just yet, but if we look down here, there we have the upscale to max option, and we can still make variations of this photo and even do some light upscale redos, etc. So this is like the bare bones of Midjourney. You simply type in imagine and you type in some text. But if you want to start to control this, that's where you'll want to add more specific information at the end. So I'm going to type in another type of prompt here, and then a little piece of what we can call, if you're in After Effects, they're kind of like mini expressions. So you type in dash dash followed by a command, and it's going to do something else for you to assist in the process of creating this artwork. Okay, so I'm going to type in, first of all, Pearl Jam, because they're one of my favorite bands, in the style of Michelangelo. Okay, so now I've not only defined what I want to see, but in the style of an artist. So that's something that you can enter in your first text prompt. And then we can say, you know what, I don't want this to be in a 1:1 aspect ratio. I work in video. I want this to be in a 16:9 aspect ratio. So you'll notice I entered a comma, and I'm going to follow that with a dash dash AR space 16:9. And now in this specific prompts, fingers crossed that I didn't misspell anything, looks pretty good to the Midjourney bot. We're going to see another 4 images produced, but in that 16:9 style. So AR is just a shortcut there for aspect ratio. And we'll just let this happen here in the background and come back to this Pearl Jam style image in a second. So one thing is, if you don't want to remember this, we will be providing you a resource that Ben found, which is kind of like a prompt creator for you. And this could go into help or assist you in the creation of prompts. The other thing to do is don't forget, you can always go back to your your actual web browser and copy your own prompts and then feed them. So I can see here, I got this style of an image, but if I wanted to, it didn't seem to identify the band Pearl Jam. I might want to be more specific, where I take this exact same prompt and try to be a bit more specific, right? So I'm copying that Pearl Jam band with Eddie Vedder in the style of Michelangelo and see if it comes up with something else. Mentioning a few other prompts that I absolutely love besides aspect ratio, which I would say is one that I used right at the very beginning. I did want to mention something else. I'm going to go back to the style. The sky is red. And the prompt that I'm going to type in here is something called style. Style can be just with a S in particular. And the lowest number style in your regular prompt is about 650. This is pretty much asking Midjourney to take your text and not really stray away in too many creative aspects away from that. Versus if you enter a higher style number, you're asking the actual Midjourney engine to, in some cases, not even reference the text. Just go as crazy as you want in terms of discovery. So I'm going to type in the sky is red, and let's go with a low style number so you can see this. 1,000 is pretty low. The default's around the 2,000 mark. And just in comparison, I'm going to take this exact same prompt, right, what I just entered, a nice little copy and paste. We've got the Imagine prompt here. I'll copy this and I'll up this to an incredibly large style number, right? 40,000. So in that instance, without it, again, the 1:1 images, in the second variation, I guarantee you that most of the photos that will be created won't even have red in the sky. It looks right now that there is red in the sky, but I would say that they're going to give a lot more variations away from what I had asked for. All right, so we see a low style number and we see a higher style number there. One other thing to discuss in terms of a prompt, so we've got AR, we've got a style that I use all the time. The next number in particular is chaos. So you can see here, low style number, very close to the sky is red. High style number, do you guys see any red in the sky at all?
Not really.
Nope.
Right, so it's not even really, it's kind of like someone not really listening to you is the best way to describe it. You basically type in some text. I'm like, I'm going to go do something else completely opposite from what you asked.
Go back to weird Eddie Vedder up there. Cause
yeah.
I agree.
Yeah, we can go back.
I think it looks like Chris Cornell. All right. Like, that is just.
I think the first one's kind of Eddie Vedder. He's kind of Eddie Vedder-ish right there.
Eddie Vedder is some. I mean, I have so many questions. I mean,
yeah.
I don't even know if I want to go down this road, but I mean, how weird can you get with these prompts? Is there some sort of safe filter that applies? Because I could think of a lot of
yes
words.
Yes, there is.
Use.
There's certain words that are banned, and it will basically say that, hey, based on our channel discretions, we are unable to do that, and we can ban you. So yeah, you have to. You're not able to go full out in terms of what you're asking it to create in terms of imagery.
Can I just add something really quickly here, though?
Yeah.
If you look at some of the other people's prompts, which you're absolutely able to do very, very easily, despite those filters, some people really deserve a little trip in horny jail. They need to just go away for a little bit, come back when they're more polished members of society, and just calm down a little bit.
There's no rules on Art, man.
I think it's probably very nice that Midjourney has those filters right now, is all I'm saying.
Yes. It's good too, and definitely something to I'm sure to not expose certain pieces of artwork to other users on the channel. So we saw that kind of weird Eddie Vedder creation in the background. I did want to mention, I know we're tight on time here. A couple more prompts. One of them is chaos, which I think is pretty cool. And chaos is the variation between the 4 images that are produced. So it's like, how close do you want them to be, like on the first version? You'll in fact see that in most cases, if the sky is red in this instance, you could say that they're pretty close to each other in terms of a general style. But if you up the chaos number to 100, it should vary the 4 different images that you get quite a bit. So in this prompt, I did a 69 aspect ratio with a chaos of 100, but a style that is fairly tight towards the sky is red. So one thing, as this is being produced in the background, we'll take a look. We can already see a little bit of variation based on that chaos number between the 4 images. That I think is worth mentioning is that you could also have Midjourney reference images from online. And in fact, if I go here to my web browser, I happen to have a picture of the Hubble Space Telescope that I found online. I'm just going to copy the image address and I'm going to paste it into Discord. So here we go. Where'd you go, Discord? There we go. Type in Imagine again. And the first thing I'll have is the file path to that image. By the way, you can upload images as well. And I might type something else, right? I'm going to say, so take this image as a reference, and I'm just going to type in the word by Saturn. And I'll enter another prompt here just for 16:9 in terms of its aspect ratio, and followed by a style number a little bit higher in size of 6,000. So this is basically, you just copy a image-based web address. It's going to see that. You enter some text, and it's going to produce an image for you. Now, when we talk about some of the advanced things that you can do when it comes to prompting, is that you can give the image a weight over the text, or a text that you enter a weight over the image. So it's like, by default in the system, it's like, how much of this image am I going to actually, really take? And it's given a default weight, but you can of course change that weight to be greater so that it references that image that much more. And that prompt, I'll just copy this here as that's produced in the background with the imagined text. And I almost spelt something wrong there, so good on me to not. I'm going to enter one more prompt here, which is image weight. I'm going to make that a 2. And this is going to just give it a greater image weight over the actual text that was entered. And of course, I messed up that argument. And that's because I was hasty and didn't have 2 dashes next to the image weight. So all good. I can't wait to see that style guide here in a second, Ben, in terms of entering some of this stuff. So I can't count how many times I, though, have in these prompt searches made a spelling mistake every once in a while and had to go in here and redo the prompt just to get it just right. This should work. No. My typing is over. I'm going to turn my screen off for a second, type this correctly to not be, and then I'll show you guys the rendition of the image of Saturn where there's a heavier image weight here in a second. But this is the one where it's a lower image weight, so it's actually weighing on the text a bit more, but that's what it created while referencing the image that I just fed it.
So I think while you're doing that, while you hide your screen for a second, what we'll do is there's take a couple of questions. Like one was under the Midjourney terms, can you make these into physical art prints if you wanted to? Yes, you can. But remember, of course, that Midjourney also owns copyright on that. So if you're just doing those original images straight from Midjourney, then they also can do those for you as well. I think there's also some terms in there, special terms for things like NFTs, and if you make more than a certain amount, like a few tens of thousands of dollars in merchandise profits as well, they get to take a percentage of that. All of those things are found on the website. And remember, though, that we're looking at Midjourney now, but we looked at Stable Diffusion earlier, and Dall-E. All of these have different terms and conditions about things like copyright and usage of the images as well. So I hope that answered your question. I think we've been doing quite well keeping up with the other questions, though.
Yeah.
I mean, the only other thing I'd say is that, like, Ross, when you're working in, or Nick, but let's start with Ross, actually. When you're working with your prompts, how much do you put weight on things like grammar, in terms of, using colons instead of commas, or, quotation marks as well? Do you spend a lot of time with that?
It is kind of an interesting question. I actually think it's something important to raise too, because to mention that, these tools right now are very English language based, right? So I think potentially they could be challenging for someone who's not a native English speaker, because grammar and syntax does actually play a part into it. Personally, I kind of tend to describe what I want. So if I want to see a big sculpture of a guitar, I'm going to say, a big sculpture of a guitar. But you can play and just say guitar comma sculpture, comma this, or some people use a plus symbol. I think you have to really play with it, and it's really interesting. There's certain things that I just could not get Midjourney to create. I could not get Midjourney to create an acoustic bass that looks real. No matter what I did. So it's really it's just really interesting to play with the prompts.
Nick, what's your experience been with that?
I would say that grammatically, I would be more precise, of course, when entering the prompts at the end, in terms of style, of course, because it has to be precise. It's been mixed in terms of my experience. I think, like Ross, when trying to get things that are very specific, I haven't necessarily always had success. Where I have had success is an experimentation of working with Midjourney along a theme. So one thing that I had recently did was, on over 500 prompts I fed it, is just simply started off with a sentence called "creativity is," and then from that formed different statements. Creativity is art, or creativity is focusing ideas on your computer, etc. And then from that starting prompt kind of developed a series of artwork that was similar or spoke to a given theme. But in terms of grammar, and in some cases, I would say the more specific that I've gotten with a prompt, especially if it was very wordy, the less accurate Midjourney was at getting me what I was looking for. So I found the simpler the sentence containing the key information that you want to give it have been the best results. But it's usually a big push and pull. Have you found something similar yourself, Ben?
Well, I've been this has been the sort of problem that I've had, not the problem, but the exploration that I'm having with it at the moment, because I'm trying lots of different ways of trying to separate things out. Anecdotally, maybe things that are closer together, use a plus sign. Things that are you want separated out, maybe use a comma there. But it's really difficult to judge apples to apples, because but basically when it comes down to it, even with the same prompt, you're getting vastly different images returned. So how much of that fine tuning with punctuation is actually real, and how much of it is just in my head, no one knows, because we can't see into the mind of the Midjourney machines. That's a big unknown. We don't know how it thinks. So we're trying to talk to this big alien creature in a language that neither of us quite understand semantically in the same way, I think. And that's the interesting bit, I think, of it as well.
Yeah. You just reminded me of something, Ben, and actually something that you brought up as well in your demonstration, Ross, which was seed numbers. So when you do find something that you like, an artistic style, all of the artwork in Midjourney has a seed number related towards it. And you can find that seed number by simply mailing or replying to the prompt with a mail icon. So once you do, it will tell you the seed number, and then you could use that seed number to reiterate that style, or try to, with other various text prompts. So in that kind of creation exploration process, I do think that the seed number and how the exploration of also referencing images can help guide the system. And there is a resource, I'll give it out after, but a whole compilation on GitHub of various tests that the Midjourney, the people behind Midjourney have done, including camera tests, different styles of lighting, different styles of 3D renders, and the results that have been produced from it. So I can share. I'll share with Brian this.
I think we can put that in chat as well.
It's in the chat, guys. I just put it.
It's in the chat. Yeah. So it's a whole massive stylization guide in terms of different camera prompts that you can give it, combinations, even referencing various artists. So it's great. I think while that copyright is going to be talked about for a long time, right now it does allow for continual learning against through artists in prompts, which I think is quite fascinating.
It really is. There's a very, very good community based around prompts, and people are very willing to help people out as well, and sort of finesse things a lot. It's also worth reminding people that not every image you prompt is gonna look good, and some stuff needs nudging, and it needs nudging, and it needs work, and it needs iteration, and at the end of it, it needs that loving hand of an artist to come in and create the finished piece a lot of the time. And I think that's where people get stunned by the initial images you can get out, but get frustrated that it's not it's not a magic box that can just reach into your brain and pull things out. There is still some creativity involved. Right now, anyway. Are there any final thoughts, Nick? Anything finally you want to share? Unfortunately, we do have to start saying goodbye.
The only other thing I have to share, I mean, definitely type in help on Midjourney. That's going to give you a ton of resources as it comes to prompts there. And the one thing that I didn't demonstrate is one which is dash test P. One thing is it only produces if you're going with the regular aspect ratio 2 images, but it's more of a photorealistic engine compared to the one that you're using by default. So test P is something to definitely try. And that was the image that I showed off of the second example inside of After Effects that was created with test P. And I think some of the examples that Ross created might have used that prompt or something similar, referencing various different render engines, 3D render engines.
Yeah, I've got another link as well, which I'll give in just a second. But Ross, any final thoughts?
No, I just think it's been a fun session to share with everyone. What our team is. Done, and how we're exploring these tools. Again, I advise people not to install Discord on your phone, and because it can be a real huge time suck. It can be very addictive. It's been great, and I appreciate everything that you guys showed today. So thanks for everyone for joining us.
Yeah. No, thanks everyone. Thanks Ross, and thanks Nick for the demos that you gave today, and the exploration you gave as well. It was really, really exciting, and I always learn a lot when I talk to you two. Ryan, if you've got 1 second just to bring up that other thing, if you are using Midjourney, I found a really good resource. I've forgotten the name of the person who's created it, but we can actually see the website, and we'll put it in chat. But this is a Google Sheet, which is designed to help you to create the prompts and craft the prompts, so that a lot of the magic that Nick was showing you with regards to things like the dash image weight and all of that, it's actually available as a Google Sheet that you would copy into your Google Drive. So we'll put that link in the chat as well. This is really good. But if you just go back one bit there we go. Yeah. So it's basically a really lovely little spreadsheet that takes you in and helps you guide you through the process.
I feel like you've just infected my whole worksheet files, but that's okay. Hopefully we're good. No,
I cannot vouch for the one you got there, Ryan, but I know that before I said okay to the to the scripts. I certainly had a little look through and made sure they weren't doing anything nefarious, and they weren't. So don't just click it. Don't just click it.
I will throw that link in the chat.
God damn. Thank you. But yes, but take a little look to make sure that the script isn't doing it. You can run it without the script. You just have to manually copy and paste things. It's fine. All right. Anyway, let's wrap this thing up. We've still got a little bit of housekeeping to do. If you've made it this far and you haven't clicked the thumbs up button on YouTube, then I'm very sad. And you know, that. Please like the stream. It makes us know that you want, you know, more sessions that are like this. But before we say goodbye, we have one last thing to do, and that's to give away our big grand prize. Yes, people have been running to borisfxlive.com. They've been typing in their names furiously into the competition, and we now have a chance to spin the giant Boris FX tombola to give away a copy of the Boris FX Suite. So that's everything that we make, including Optics and Continuum that we've seen today, but also Sapphire, Mocha Pro and Silhouette. It's a huge giveaway, and we're going to one lucky winner. So, Mr. Brian Fox, would you roll the Boris FX tombola, please? Pull out a name. We have it. It is Kyriakos sorry, Kyriakos. Right, Grammaticopoulos. No, Grammaticopoulos. Yes. Kyriakos, thank you very much for joining us today. It's not bad. Me mispronouncing your name, you winning Boris FX Suite, an annual subscription. I think that's a fair trade-off. Congratulations to you. Big thumbs up in the chat, everyone. Thanks very much for joining us. We've been through a lot today. If you haven't watched everything, don't fear. The replay will be up immediately after we stop streaming here. Keep your questions coming in the comments. We will read and answer every single one, except the rude ones. We will just read those. But thanks, everyone. Join us again on the next Boris FX Live very soon. Keep up to date. borisfxlive.com. Visit us very soon, and I will see you again later. Thanks for joining us. Bye for now. Stop doing that in the chat.